of Tuesday, November 5th, 2019 to order. And if you would please, we'll start by honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda today, please, the South Whitley Public Library additional appropriation request. Is there anybody here to speak on that, please? If you would just come forward and introduce yourself and who you represent and share with us why you're here.
Okay, hi, I'm Vicki Bilza. I'm the director of the South Whitley Community Public Library. Many of you know that we are building an expansion, and when we submitted our 2019 budget over a year ago, the plans for that expansion were not totally finalized, nor the expenses known. So since then, obviously we've broken ground and we've done a lot of work. So we discovered that we needed additional appropriations from our rainy day LRF, and we're also going to get a construction loan to finish the work on the project. So we've worked with Jane Herndon from Ice Miller Legal Counsel and the Department of Local Government Finance to determine that a public hearing needed to be held by you to grant the additional appropriations needed for the amounts that you should see in your resolution.
Okay, so I will close the meeting at this time and open the public hearing portion of the additional appropriation request for the South Whitley Public Library. I would invite anyone forward at this time that would like to speak for or against the additional appropriation for the South Whitley Public Library. I know sometimes people hold back and don't want to be the first one, but I will call one more time and then we will close the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak today? Having no response, the public hearing will be closed and we will go back into our council session.
I think their project is so worthwhile we all did when we moved for it in the first place. Since this is their money we're talking about, but it's not going to affect our budget any. I move we approve the request for a transfer.
I have a motion. Call for a second.
Second that motion.
Motion a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand. And those opposed, the same. And let it be shown that it was passed unanimously with all board members present. Next item on the agenda is the cost of living increase discussion.
You asked for it. Do you want to start?
Okay, I'm sure that more than one person's got a way to do this. My thought is that the employees who were pay was adjusted due to their change in what they're doing or bringing them up to date, and also taking them up to the level of external, that those people in 2020 are going to make more money than they did in 2019 and be doing the same work. And I think it's kind of unfair that we have, I think I might be wrong on this, 13 people who didn't fall into those categories. So that the people, those are supervisors and elected officials, and the people working for them have not gotten a raise. And I think that they deserve to have a cost of living raise. That to be debated. My suggestion is 2%, although the federal government says it was 1.6%. So that's my thought on doing it. I'm sure there's others too. So.
My thoughts on it would be that we should have a cost of living across the board for all employees and it'd be a fixed amount rather than a percentage on it. And my suggestion is $1,200.
How did you arrive at that number, that 1,200?
That number would be less than the percentage across the board for our general budget, but yet it would be sufficient increase for all employees.
And Bill, just for clarification, are you suggesting that we give an increase only to those who did not
Yes.
factor out higher based on that WIS report?
I think that's looking out for the taxpayer a little bit also.
I don't know if all of you received my email yesterday, but I have a proposal. I can go over my rationale and my thoughts if you're not all familiar with those. But in the additional paperwork you received today, there should be a copy that has been prepared by the auditor's office. Sure.
Yeah, I read it.
I don't see that either.
By the way, just one more clarification on what I said.
Is that the same thing that was emailed to me?
I think that the deputy, chief
Okay, well, I
deputy
have
should be
that. I
85% of the office holder.
No,
I don't disagree with that.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think the chief deputies should be at 85% of the office holder.
There are more copies. So essentially, my proposal admits my ignorance when we passed the budget of a few items. I believe that at the time I thought that COLA was implied in the WIS information, and since we've been told that it was not, so I would support the 1.6% that the federal government is suggesting for Social Security. I also was under the mistaken understanding that special occupations, essentially elected officials and a few other designated people, should be factored in the same way or understood according to midpoint and salary in the same way that we do the PAT, the COET, the law enforcement, and the tradespeople. And in fact, we received later information from WIS that was basically just information from what other counties are doing, and that we should not consider any kind of factoring or comparison as a direct similarity to what was for the different categories of folks. And at the time, I was unaware of the terms of the contract between the sheriff and the county. So what I am proposing is a COLA of 1.6 for every employee, with the exception of a few elected officials and their deputies. And I am also proposing an increase for those elected officials, full-time elected officials, as well as the commissioners, of $3,270, and then bringing each of the deputies to 85%. The effect of this being recognizing that, in fact, we do have elected officials that I believe to a certain, or to a large degree, meet what I believe the qualifications that we should base pay on. I think we should not do it by comparison, but it should be based on how they fulfill all the state laws and regulations, their ability to operate the department in a manner that serves the public satisfactorily, the attainment of necessary professional credentials and continuing education, the operation of the department in a cost-effective manner for the taxpayers, the degree of their actual involvement and leadership in the operation of the office, having become aware that legally it can be a part-time position, whether or not our office holders are actually full-time involved or if they're just figureheads or oversight, significantly should impact how they are paid. And that would be my final point, that the percentage of full-time work should also be considered for our elected officials. So you have a proposal that is $173,876.89 higher than what was already adopted. And I just put it out there for your consideration.
Would all three of these proposals or ideas fall within the parameters that you advertised at 3%?
Well, when I talked to State Board of Accounts, what can be done is you guys will adopt your salary ordinance in December. I will create it depending upon what happens today. And we'll have to do additional appropriations for everything in January. And that is allowed. I talked to Lori Rogers from State Board of Accounts and she verified that with me.
But my proposal does, in fact, remain under the budgeted,
Yes, but
the
because-
advertised budget, right?
Right, but because we already did adopt the budget, it's still gonna be over what
So
we
that's-
adopted, so we
okay.
still have to go through the process, but yes, it is within the parameters of what we advertised. That is correct.
It was important to me not to go over what we had originally advertised. And that's part of how I arrived at these figures.
With the $1,200 across the board for all employees, what would that figure out within our budget?
I'm not gonna know right off the top of my head.
Do you have any reason to believe that any of the three proposals would not fall underneath the money that would be, that we could do an additional appropriation on? The highest one, I think, would probably be what Bill talked about, would be the 2%. Or, well, I don't know.
2% for
Yeah.
those that did not
Yeah, so
create.
so you made sure that yours would definitely be
Yes.
the higher end of the three
Yeah.
things that have been discussed.
And additionally, I can't speak for him, but the sheriff did indicate to me that his issues that he brought up the last meeting are resolved by receiving the same pay as the other elected official adjustments that I'm suggesting. I did not address the matron issue because I will just be honest and say, I don't understand it.
I don't either, but I think isn't there a state, something that tells us what it should be, 8% of the, I think it's established, and I'm sorry, I can't quote you what that is, because I don't remember either. Am I right about, yeah.
I do think John's would be the closest to being, maybe the closest to what we advertised.
John's proposal.
Thank you.
That
It would
would
be-
probably be the highest.
Okay.
For yours would be the highest, or the closest to what we advertised.
I was gonna say, it's close to being awards both directions, isn't it?
It'd be close. This would be the highest.
If anybody wants a copy of my rationale, I've got them. You received it in the email as well, though.
Yep.
Yep.
And having made this significant increase, I recognize that we have an economic downturn. We're going to have to already, even if we don't add this, either hold the line with no raises, potentially ask people to take cuts for a short period of time, or lay off employees. Having already gone to the midpoint, I don't see that this $178,000 is significantly different than what we've already done when it comes to future impact.
To get things moving a little bit, I'm going to make a motion that we give all employees across the board COLA raise of $1,200.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second, so that'll open it up for further discussion. Is there any further discussion on the motion and the second? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor of the motion that's been made, please respond by raising your right hand. And those opposed, the same. And it was passed 5-2 with Councilman Overdeer and Councilman Kumper voting nay. Next item on the agenda, elected officials' salaries. I'm not sure who that indicates to come forward, but the floor is open.
Morning.
Well, I have some things prepared to say.
If you would, just because it's hard to pick up, introduce yourself and who
Kimberly,
the office.
Whitley County Assessor.
Thank you.
So I guess with what just took place with the cost of living raises a question with what was presented here with our elected officials' salaries. You know, we still have a question on the table as far as we are concerned with what has been approved internally for the PAT 2 position pay. I'll let you take one and pass it on down. I've highlighted the PAT 2 pay. There was a lot of emphasis put on the PAT 1 pay as far as the department heads that are currently at that higher level of income at the 65,242. And I know that it was stressed from us as far as, if I can back it up a little bit, we followed the salaries and procedure ordinance. We came to the Personnel Committee. We was recommended by the Personnel Committee to come to council because that was going to be a council decision as far as what our concerns were going to be as far as the elected officials and their chief deputies. And last meeting, it really, we were listened to, but then we were really never offered an opportunity for any kind of discussion. Things kind of just went on to approving and adopting the budget. We heard from a couple of you how you didn't feel that the percent, and that largely of a percent of an increase in a year's time was not something that you could agree with as far as approving our salaries to the PAT 1. 2 questions were asked to 2 of our elected officials as far as if they knew the percent of the increase that was going to be in their salaries. I believe they both said no, and that was it. I think, Tom, you hit on the fact that, you know, given what you've seen with your history of your employment for seeing increases in employees, you've never seen increases that significant before. But I guess that raises a question to us, and Kim, you're a business owner, but, you know, can you really be able to give increases to employees of great significance and then only exclude just a few people, which you've granted a cost of living now for those few people that were not going to receive anything. But what's been done internally here as far as what's been approved in the WIS analysis for these even PAT 2 positions that I emphasized on when I talked last month, those positions are approved over every one of your 5 elected officials that have come to you within those PAT 2 positions. And those positions all report to a director or a department head. They don't carry the responsibility that we carry as elected officials and what we bring for the responsibility that we have as your elected officials to the county. And, so with what Tim has proposed in numbers for your elected officials, and then to be 85% of their salary for your chief deputies, I guess, we're still asking, with what's been improved internally, if we can still be considered for the 2020 budget, at least recognition within reason to these PAT 2 positions for your elected officials, the 5 that have come to you. And then the chief deputies' salaries, I believe that the 85% that Tim has proposed, as far as how the chief deputies compare to those positions within that PAT 3 category there, with their responsibilities being pretty equivalent to a lot of your office administrative positions. I think we've been more than fine through the years, and I've seen it too through the years. I worked in a county where we didn't get increases for 5 years because there wasn't money to give. But you stick with it, you hang with it. I've done that. And the increases that have been given to the elected officials' salaries, as far as the increases that they have gotten, everybody else has gotten as well. There's never been any kind of refactoring because we're elected officials. Our elected official or our assessor responsibility has increased tremendously with this cyclical reassessment that we went to back in 2014. That's never been revisited. The increases that position has been given has just strictly been because of cost of living or whatever's been given across the board. There's never been any additional money for that position to ever increase because of added responsibility. But now that this precedence has been set internally, given what's been added to our office and our responsibility, I just really think that it's fair that all 5 of your elected officials be somewhat considered here within this PAT 2 category if the PAT 1 is so far out of touch. And we never got the opportunity to really discuss that last month. And I'm asking for that now, please.
How did you pick the PAT 2?
Pardon me?
How did you happen to?
Because those salaries all exceed all 5 of these elected officials now, since the external midpoint was approved. And they're not department heads. They report to department heads or directors. And the PAT 1 was obviously too far out of reach for the percent that they felt was too high, or you felt might have been too high for an increase. But, your PAT 1 positions, the 4 that are there, are all for directors or department heads. None of them are elected officials, but, your elected officials, I feel for what's been we feel for what's been approved internally should be somewhere between the PAT 2 and the PAT 1. We weren't factored. We were not part of that analysis. We were excluded from it. And the chief deputies. We prepared job descriptions for our chief deputies, and they weren't recognized.
Kim, my concern is that it's all equal, and different elected officials carry different level of credentials and necessary. So that's why I proposed the way I did propose it.
And we've all looked at that, and I think that we all thought that was something that was acceptable.
I'm just letting you know why I can't support the PAT 2 number.
Okay,
because
and I'm emphasizing.
And it's not the number, it's
Right.
the equality with different levels of responsibility.
Right. I'm emphasizing on the PAT 2 and the fact that those are not department heads. They're not elected officials, they're not department heads, they're not directors. But I after looking, we've all looked at what you have proposed, and we've all looked it over in great detail, and with the way that you have it divided out here, that is something that we were in agreement to. I'm emphasizing on the PAT 2, but yet what Tim has proposed here if the PAT 2 is not something that can be brought up for any kind of approval, what Tim has proposed here is something we've all talked about and agreed upon.
What did the committee decide to pass it on to the council, but did they have a recommendation?
The Personnel Committee on, I'm sorry, on which issue? What was your question?
Did the committee make a recommendation other than just pass it on to the council?
No, that was when we had that Personnel Committee, due to the nature of it and the fact that it was going to be a decision that was made by council, we really didn't, we didn't make a recommendation. Our only recommendation was this was important enough that it goes in front of the whole council and not something that we would say, not necessarily agree with and keep it from going back to council. So that's how it got brought forward for the entire council to have the opportunity to be made aware and listen to and make a decision.
Did they have a recommendation?
No.
I would move that we go to the numbers that I presented of the 3270 for elected officials and commissioners, and then the 85% rule for chief deputies, and that be a part of the new salary ordinance.
Is that a motion, sir?
That's a motion.
Okay. So we have a motion. Is there a second to do that, knowing that if we do that, then we would have to rescind what we have done because the money wouldn't be available to do both. So I do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second for that motion? So hearing no second, then it dies. Is there any other questions, please, of council?
So you would go the 3270 on the 5 elected officials, then go to the 85%. Then what about the 1,200 that we already did? We would throw that out?
Well, there would have to be a motion to rescind it. We would be outside of the parameters of what monies would be available with what we have already done.
Okay. Okay.
Can you clarify for us what you were told by the state Board of Accounts?
I know that we wanted to stay under what we
Right.
advertised, but with doing additional appropriations, you can go over what we advertised if you do that in January. But if you don't want to stay below that, because I can't run the numbers right now. I
Sure.
can't do it that fast. But because they are additional appropriations, it's in addition to our budget, so it's going to be out of the parameters anyway.
Okay, so it is
So does that make
possible.
sense? It is.
Okay, then I will take back what I have said, and that it's possible to do both, so we would not have to go back and rescind the cost of living increase that we have already given. But we are still at the point that a motion was made and a second was not, and that motion then died.
Given the further discussion, I would like to re-enter the motion and see if there's then a second, because
Could,
is that not possible? I think that there was confusion on the issue.
I think that you are within, we are within compliance for you to make that. I will allow you to make that motion again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if I find out that I'm wrong by allowing that without it being altered or changed in some way, then that might be another issue. But I don't think that this is a case that you do have to alter or change it, because you're basing it on new information, although that information, or what I said, did not poison the well to the fact that I said it after the fact of, would we have to rescind something?
True.
After the fact that we didn't get a second on that motion. So I don't think that I poisoned the well as far as the conversation on that issue. But just to remain open here and work and try to move forward, I will allow you to make a motion.
I move that we consider a pay increase for our elected officials, 5 full-time elected officials, the commissioners, the sheriff, and the chief deputies of the 5 primary elected full-time officials, as described in the original proposal.
bound by that contract of what we do with the sheriff's department, I believe.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
We have to vote on this today?
Well, there's a motion, if there's a second, it'll go to a vote, yes, sir. I have a motion, is there a second? So the motion will die.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by council for?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around everything we're doing right now. That's why I asked if it had to be passed today, if we've got this month to look over these figures and figure it out. I mean, I don't want to, I'm going in circles here with what we've already did, then we want to come back to here.
Well, Jana will correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're talking about additional appropriations, can we do an additional appropriation to affect a pay raise for an elected official after the start of the year?
No.
So,
Well, you can do it in January, but that'll be the only time, because if you do it in December with the salary ordinance, but I needed to know a direction to create the salary ordinance by your December meeting. So. if
so
this-
when we're talking about, and the question is, what is possible? That's, I guess,
What is possible is if you change it and you make a decision on the salary ordinance for December, I can do an additional appropriation for the elected officials' salaries only in January, and that is it. It cannot change after that.
So it can be brought up in another form next meeting if we would choose to, or in January. Or it dies where it is. Is that correct?
Just to clear the air a little bit, I will go back to my suggestion, and I'll make a motion of that we give a 2% raise to elected officials, and the rest of it stay as is.
and that would be on top of the cost of living raise then that we approved?
No, that's right, we already passed that. Yeah, can't do that.
Do you withdraw your motion, or is it still a motion, sir?
Or could be in lieu of.
I think at this point,
Yeah.
the motion's made, and there was not a second, so it dies. At our December meeting, if I understand it right, that motion can be made again, and if it comes up with a lack of second on, it will die again. The motion can be made at our December meeting. Whether it's passed or not is up to us there at the council.
And then I think at some point, we're going to get to where, will the motion be allowed if it's exactly the same? And I think then you're going to have to work, if you want to present something again or bring something up, we're going to have to make some sort of a alteration that might convince someone else on the council to change their mind.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've already considered those possibilities.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, please?
I do have a question. It appears that we're being left with a feeling that it's very possible that, I guess I would ask, in fairness, as 5 of your elected officials, do you feel that it's fair that you have positions that have been approved to the salary that they have that are not department heads or directors or an elected official, that have been approved above where these 5 elected officials are?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on the question.
Do you, I mean, it almost feels like that as elected officials, we're feeling like we're not deserving to be, for our salaries to be recognized where and I'll emphasize back to the Pat 2 area again, is not being recognized where some of those positions are. That's what we're left with. That's what we're feeling. For what we contribute, for our wealth, for our knowledge, for our contribution to the financial stability that was emphasized last meeting. You know, that's what we're left with right now, and it's very disheartening.
I appreciate that you say that, because I don't think that any of you would be here if you didn't feel that way. But I also will speak for myself, and I think obviously probably for council, on the fact that, yes, we do think that the process that we have put in place this year, and that we've worked hard to come up with numbers and evaluations, I think that it is fair.
That you have positions that do not have and carry the weight that we do, that they be making a salary above these 5 elected officials. You think that's fair?
I think that the work that we have done with WIS is fair. I think what we have done as a council is fair. I believe that.
We were not factored in that WIS analysis. We were left out of that, along with our 5 chief deputies. We were excluded from that. And you think that's fair?
I think what we have done is fair.
20 years, county government, never seen this. Thank you.
Commissioner report, please.
Okay, I've just got a couple of things. Before you've got some information on the Tech 84 body scanner that we are considering for, we've got our CEDAP budget for 2020 for the Community Corrections Program. Paula brought that to us probably a year ago, year and a half ago, for the simple fact that we've been very concerned about the safety and security at community corrections for a long time. This will make sure that at least nobody's be able to bring any contraband in, any guns or anything like that, and assure that we've got some safety for our employees in community corrections. When we started looking at this, we actually started looking at it for the jail, because of the situation that we had with the jail, with people bringing in contraband in areas that it's hard to find. So what we've done is, working with the jail and with the Community Corrections Program, the commissioners and council representatives have looked at this program, or this Intercept program, and the information again before you. It's a small unit, a smaller unit than what normally has. It's and it actually has facial recognition. It does a body scan. The body scan is a low-dose body scan. If you go through the airport security scanner, you can only go through that 250 times in a year. With this scanner, it's a low dose that you can use it 1,000 times a year for any individual. So it's a great unit. Homeland Security is going to these units because of the fact that it is low dose. It's 110. You plug it into a 110, and it's portable. You can move it any place you want. In the meantime, when we talk to the representatives for the company, we got demonstration and talked to them, and they said that if we bought 2 units, that we could save about $40,000 to $50,000. Just in discussion with the jail, because originally they didn't have a place for it, because it's pretty cramped in the jail booking area, and I think Sean can tell you that there wasn't really, when we looked at that, there wasn't any place to put that. But after looking at the areas that they had and being able to move things around a little bit, they found out that they did have an area for one of these units, and it's really needed over there, again, for the security and safety of the individuals over there. It's costly for us to have to send people to the hospital all the time, and if there was a situation where one of our deputies or confinement officers were harmed, it gets to be very expensive. So really, for the safety and security of all of our employees that are in county community corrections and the jail, we'd like to bring this information forward to the council right now for your, this is for your information right now. I'd like you to consider our CEDA program. We've got one unit that we're going to put in to community corrections. We'd like you to consider funding a second unit for the jail. And this is for the 2020 timeframe. Again, our CEDA program for 2020 is where we had it, but commissioners are asking that you really look at this and take a look at the size, the capabilities, and if you have any other questions on that, or, you know, it's for your information. Any questions at all on this unit?
George, are you asking for the 278,
No, half of that.
half of that?
Yeah. Paula has some grant monies that she's using, and then we're going to help with the CEDA program to purchase one. But we started looking at this, and when Sean said that they can come up with an area over there now, and we could save $40,000-$50,000 by buying two now rather than one now and one later, that was probably cost efficient to do it at this point.
Would both units come out of CEDA?
No, I'm asking, we've got the one for the CEDA program right now.
For 2020.
For 2020, and we're asking the council approve funding for a second one for the jail.
And that dollars and cents would be half of 278?
Yes, yeah.
Are you going to do the unit for community
139.
corrections, whether we approve the second one or not?
Yeah, the one for community corrections is coming in. We haven't ordered it yet because we wanted to make sure to see if council will approve a second one. And again, to save the over $40,000 on this. If you'll look, the original price was $410,000, and we can save a substantial amount of money by going to 2 units on this.
Can we consider that, since you're already going to purchase the first one, you would pay the price for the first one, and that any discount would be applied to the second unit that would come out of county general rather than a 50/50?
That has more to do with probably what grant money Paula had.
You have to place the order for the two at the time. You can't just order one and delay and order
Right.
one.
Yeah.
They want that commitment that was on order two. And right now I have 17,000, but I don't know what carryover may be approved. I think this fiscal year.
But if anybody's ever been over to community corrections, they've done a great job for safety and security over there, but times have changed, and we've got to make sure that we're aware of the changes and the capabilities of what could happen, and we don't want it to happen. So that's why we talked about community corrections, and then, and again, it was really considered for the jail first, but
I'm just asking that if
yeah.
the money is there in the CEDA budget, that the savings be applied to the county general side of the purchase. I just don't know
think-
if that's possible or not.
In talking to,
My question would be, which funds, if we went with the second unit, which line items, which funds would that come out of?
well, the one thing that could come out of, because it's going to the jail, is that new jail tax, the Lowit tax that will be starting in January. And that'll be approximately $120,000 a month coming into the county general for that.
Are that jail funds designated for anything else at this time?
Not right now.
Well, we've already had it happen, so it's gonna happen again if we
Yeah.
don't have some way of catching it.
Yeah. This unit is a great unit. It's a unit that you can see pills if they've got any pills hidden any place on the body. You can see if there's a key, a handcuff key, if you can see their rings, necklaces, and you can, Thor's got some information there, a booklet that comes with that, but it's, the good thing is, it's safe because it's a low-dose unit. It's not something that we're going to have to worry about radiation from the unit. And again, with Homeland Security, it's 4 times safer than what Homeland Security is. And like I say, Homeland Security is going to these units right now.
How mobile is the unit?
It's 110, and you can move it from one room to the other.
Could it, if you had a high-profile trial going on in the courthouse on it, it could be taken from...
Easily.
From the jail or community corrections, placed there temporarily?
Yes. It'll go through a normal door. It'll go right through a normal doorway. It's on rollers. The rollers retract, but it's very versatile, really is.
It will detect something in a body cavity, too.
Yes,
correct?
yeah.
Did you do the research on this company, George, as far as, are they a reputable company, or is...
Paula did it first.
Paul, can you come up? I've got a few questions, please. And the reason I say that is because your name is on the top of this, too, so I figured you probably had made those contacts, but...
I don't know a lot more than what George has already said, but,
Well, the company is reputable? I mean,
Yes.
they've been in business for how
Yes,
long, and
and
they've got their products are out there?
yeah, they have been in operation, I don't know the exact amount of years, but they were referred by several different community corrections and jails, and I can forward you all that information by email. They also have a video. The one thing that I liked about it is the database, so if they're booked in at the jail, all their information will transfer to, when they're transferred to work release, that information will be on our system too. And it's very secure. They're going to provide a lot of training to our staff, and we can issue administrative rights as far as no one can go in and change the data once it's been put in there.
The additional yearly parts and labor warranty on the entire system is $10,000 a year.
I don't think the commissioners were going to, at the time, you discussed that you weren't going to purchase
Well,
it.
well, I think what that was, the first year it's under warranty.
Yeah.
And after that, we'll probably do something, we'll have to do something after that, but.
Well, and that gets me to the next question about upkeep, general, once a year, where they come in and look at it as far as general maintenance and calibration of it. Is that something, I know it's included in the first year, but what's going to be the cost of that down the line if we don't have an
that's
additional
10,000.
warranty?
Yeah, that'd be the $10,000.
For the parts and for them to come in and calibrate.
And they did also mention, as far as our training, they would keep us current on our training. Should we have to testify on the system? They're not just going to come in and train us one time and then us have to testify 2 years later and say, oh, we haven't been updated for a year. That's at no additional cost.
But again, with that new tax, the LOIT that's coming in, I would suggest that we take that out of the LOIT.
That's what it's for.
I might suggest that you contact them and see if in fact they would give continuing, like phone support, if in fact you do have to testify, if they would consult with you at any given time, as opposed to just the once a year or when there's maintenance needed. Because that technical support can be valuable in a trial.
Right.
Personally, I'm very interested in having both units purchased at the same time, utilizing our new low shell tax on it. I think it's a situation nowadays on it that is very needed on it. And I will make the motion that we go ahead and approve for 2 units with it coming out of the 2020 jail tax low line items.
Second that.
So I have a motion, a second, we'll go to further discussion. Paul, how much money do you have available
I
through
have
grants?
$17,000 right now.
17,000, and you anticipate you could possibly have more, depending on where all your accounts end up at the end of the year?
By December 31st, I should have a better idea.
But it's not going to be $278,000.
I usually spend actually probation has given us their carryover from last year from the grant. So that's where the Community Corrections uses every dime we're awarded, so.
I'd suggest an amendment that we clarify that one unit be purchased from Commissioner's seated budget and one through County General based on the LOA tax.
I agree with that amendment.
So I have a motion and a second. George, do you have any input on the motion that's on the floor?
No, I would suggest that the commissioners would be happy to do that.
Any further discussion?
I just want to know if you could, from Jen, that come under the general budget? I mean,
I actually don't, I think it'll be in its own separate fund. Probably won't go into county general, it'll be its own. So, I'll know where to take it out of when the fund's created, so.
Now, do I understand that, George? They're gonna take the whole 278,000 out of the tax?
No, it'll actually be,
We just have-
we'll put 100 and whatever it is, plus whatever Paula has for the first one. The second one will be, come out of the jail tax.
That's half.
The full 278,000?
No, the 139,000 that will
Oh,
be for
okay,
the,
okay, I see.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand. And those opposed, the same. Let it be shown that it was passed unanimously with all board members present.
Thank you.
thank you. The only other thing I have is we're asking, we presented to Personnel Committee an IT support technician position for consideration also. And I don't know, Thor, if you wanted to bring that to them or what?
So the Personnel Committee did meet, and one of the issues that was brought up and talked about is that the county would like to look at adding a position for a IT. With the numbers that were provided by George and what the potential cost savings could be, it made sense, and the Personnel Committee did then tell him to bring it forward to the entire council, favorably approved by the committee, but for council to make a decision on adding this position to the county. And with that being said, that it would first need to be determined what the job description would be, which has been put together, but then the job description needs to be vetted through WIS, and there would be a certain cost associated with getting this position factored. So we have that to consider. We have first of all, the approval of the position, and then the factoring of the job description as it's been presented here. So I would open that up then for discussion, and of course, questions on on any detailed part of it, please.
What department would this position fall under? Would the supervision come from the commissioners? Would it?
It would come from the commissioners, yes.
Okay.
Will there be cost savings offset by something we're contracting for now?
Yeah, what we're doing right now is, we have preferred IT that we contract out, and it's about $165,000 a year that we contract with them for our IT services right now. The Sheriff's Department has a separate IT service that they use, and they're losing that IT service. So now is really a great time. I've talked to the sheriff, and he's willing to work with us. If we have an IT position, then he'll use that IT position, and it'll be actually more convenient for them and better for them to have somebody on staff with the county, the whole county, the jail system, the court system. Everybody would use this person in the position, and they would be supported by Preferred IT. Right now, we have that contract with Preferred IT, which we have to honor that contract, but when that contract comes up in, I think it's July of next year, we'll be able to have a cost savings from that of approximately, they said right around $20,000 to $30,000 cost savings just for that, because they won't have to provide somebody here all the time. So the sheriff is paying $15,000 to $20,000, a $20,000 to $30,000 cost savings from Preferred IT. there still will be a cost, but it'll be a minimal cost for bringing this position on. And I think it's really beneficial for the whole county to have somebody here on staff and understanding exactly what all of our programs are, because we have a lot of different programs.
A loose figure for what it could potentially be in the salary range before it is factored, because we will have it factored, is going to be in the 39,000 range.
And it sounds like there's potential cost savings of about 35,000.
Yeah.
So we're basically,
Minimum.
for benefits, and $5,000 difference.
And the benefit package that goes along with it, so, that's,
Yeah, that's pretty.
yep.
That would take some money out of the sheriff's budget too, since he's already paying someone else. So we have a savings there.
Well, that would be part of the savings, right.
Do you need a motion at this point, or?
Can you get a caliber person for 35,000?
What we're planning on doing is this will be a position, it'll be a position that's going to need, and I'm not sure, could I see that, Tor, real quick? The job requirements will actually, education and experience will be IT support related certificates. They'll be able to have ability to work with Windows, networking, domain administration, Active Directories, Microsoft Office, Windows, virus scans removal, VPN, LAN, WAN, and firewall. So we've looked around, we talked to Preferred IT on what their thoughts were on what the position would factor out, and that was one thing that they said. Plus, what we did also is we went to Howard County, we went to different counties around to see what they were paying their entry IT people, and that's actually where we came up with this job description. So it's not something we just kind of pulled out of the air. We did do a lot of discussion on that.
Okay.
But we do believe that we can find somebody to do that.
So then, yes, a motion would be appropriate if that's the council's wishes.
I move we approve the position as described at this point, based upon factoring and the approval then of the salary at a second time.
I'll second it.
A motion is second. We'll go to further discussion. Any further discussion?
I just kind of question whether you're gonna be able to find a qualified person for $39,000 a year.
I do believe we will, Bill. Yeah.
Any further discussion, please? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand, and those opposed the same, and let it be shown that it was passed unanimously with all board members present. At this time, I would ask for a motion to approve council spending the money with WIS to have this position vetted.
Second.
A motion is second. Any further discussion? We'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand, and those opposed the same, and that was also passed unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody like a copy of this? Nope. Is this for me to keep?
Yeah, you-
Yep. Thank you.
The only other thing I have is I just wanted to let you know that we have to, we keep upping what we put in for the landfill monies for every year in our budget, and one of the reasons is this is a methane monitoring report that we have to have every 5 years. That was $12,000 for this report that we had to have, for them to tell us that we have to do some more, put some more monitoring wells in, and we're going to have to put in vents and monitoring probes for 3 different wells that we have out there again. The methane still keeps coming out of the ground. That's been closed since, what, 76? But our landfill just keeps giving.
George, who's a person from IDEM that comes up and looks at that?
Marty Harmless. And then we deal with Rose Gabbett from SES, and that's who does the monitoring report.
And I take it it's still settling out there.
Yeah, yeah. That's another thing we need to do. We've got to have highway go in and bring some fill, because still settling and still throwing off methane.
Has it been determined in the past that it's not economically viable to do methane capture and use those resources?
Actually, RMC looked at that. Yeah, what little methane's coming off of this, it really wouldn't be worth it, but it was looked at.
Thank you.
Anything else, George?
That's it.
Any questions of George? At this time, I'm going to bring up then the other item from the Personnel Committee that needs to come forward to council for a decision. Ed, if you could just come forward and go over exactly that position and why we got to that point, please.
Okay, the position is the GIS coordinator. There's a line in here where it basically stipulates that he is a supervisor and it directs assigned personnel. He has no reports that report to him or do any supervisory type of functions. And when we looked into the question, it was like, that was brought to us that when they did the job description, they were thinking about future, not what's going on today. So we need to send this back to WIS and have them refactor it based on taking that supervisory category out of the job description. So we just need to send the job description back to WIS corrected and have them refactor it.
Do you think that that change is potentially significant enough that it needs to be refactored?
Yes, I think it'll change the job description significantly, yes.
And again, this was recommended by Personnel Committee that comes to council. So I would ask for guidance on how council would like to handle the issue, please. There will be, again, a cost associated with having this refactored because it was not WIS's mistake in the factoring. They factored it with the information that they had.
I think it needs to be done, so I'll make a motion, we send it back to WISC to refactor.
Have a motion, a second, please. Motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand. And those opposed, the same, and that passed unanimously that job description needs to be resubmitted.
Thank you.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes as they were presented to you? And at this time, I would call, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented?
I make a motion that we approve them as read.
As presented? Unless you want me to read them, sir.
No, that's all right.
All right. Have a motion, second, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by raising your right hand. And those opposed, the same. Minutes were passed unanimously. Councilman Barrett.
I have nothing further on it. I want to thank Councilman Comfort for his work on projection.
Councilman Overdeer.
Yeah, I have only a comment that I'm not totally satisfied that we've got this pay raise thing behind us, although I did vote for what we're gonna do with $1,200, but I'm just not totally comfortable with that.
Councilman Comfort.
I would just like to note that you each received from the commissioners flyer about an Ivy Tech program that is offering scholarships to volunteer firefighters and first responders that are in good standing with their local fire departmment. It's a great opportunity that we need to advertise to our volunteers in the community. They can improve their job skills, receive a degree at little to no cost.
Councilman Warner.
I have nothing.
Councilman Wheeler.
I have none.
Vice Chair Banks.
Nothing to add.
I have nothing. The meeting is adjourned. Jason, can I see you for a second, please?
Thank you for the opportunity.